Okay, greetings. If you are watching this video and you are a designated round group one grantee, you're in the right place. Here is our orientation video and a complete walkthrough of what you need to know now that you're a new grantee, or even if you're a repeat grantee, you're going to find this information helpful. I'm Phil Chase. I'm a contractor with the Office of Educator Excellence, and I work on the 27B and 27K programs. Jenny, I've got the wonderful Jenny Dickens with me. Jenny, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for the video?
Thanks, Phil. I'm Jenny Dickens. I'm the Grow Your Own consultant for the Office of Educator Excellence here at MDE. Very happy to be here sharing new information with the new round of grantees.
Woohoo! All right, sounds good. Okay, so for today's video, Jenny and I have actually packed it full of information. And just to let you know where we're going to go on from here, first of all, especially for grantees who might be new, we're going to want to go over the grant overview and purpose one more time. We're going to give you some of the highlights. We're not going to walk through every single detail because we wouldn't have a video long enough for that. So we know you're going to have some questions at the end, and as always, we're going to be available for questions. So we do have a getting support at the end, but for right now, let you know. I will let you know that we're going to kind of walk you through what the grant's all about. We're going to also show you the top materials, the first place to look for information about the grant. We know that there's a lot of information to absorb, and so part of the purpose of this video is to help walk you through it and break it down. We're, after all, educators ourselves, so you're actually going to see a little bit of a lesson plan in this video. Sorry, couldn't help it. But you're going to see us kind of break down some information for you, but also point you to where you have to do a little bit of, yes, and sorry for the teacherly language, some required reading for the course here. That's right, required reading, including our monitoring and guidance document. So those materials are going to be very important. We're going to step you through what's available to you right now to be able to get started. And then the third bullet there is what's next. Jenny and I have thought about, boy, if we were new grantees and we're diving into this with honestly a limited amount of time for the grant, what would you need to know right away? What would you need to do right away? So we've got some steps there for you. And they're nothing too hard, but we are going to urge you to, don't wait, get started. Then that last bullet point, like I said, is getting support. We're going to be able to tell you, hey, listen, you got some questions, come and get help. But we're also going to point you to some resources where you can get immediate answers to your questions. So that's what's in today's video. Just to start getting through it, let's talk about what the Grow Your Own program is all about. You've gotten a grant for this money, and you're now like, okay, what is it about? You probably do know some things of the grant already, because after all, you looked at our Grow Your Own program guide, and you were able to answer all the things to the application. But just in case you need a refresher, here it is. The purpose of our Grow Your Own grant program is to reduce teacher shortage and meet the staffing needs at the buildings or your district. So within your districts, if you're watching and you're one of the group one grantees from the dedicated round, you know that you are a priority for award because you have somewhere in your district, you have a school that's indexed for support. Very important. First off, before I forget to mention it, this is for the grant is for candidates that work at those schools, the schools that are indexed for support. But the whole idea here is to reduce teacher shortage and meet those staffing needs that are an ongoing concern. This is a federal grant. Jenny and I are happy to say that with your round of funding, we've spent through every last drop of the federal money. It's $175,000 total. So $155,000 from the federal and 20,000 from state. So we are really thrilled. We can't say how positive this is for us working at a state agency to be able to give this money out to help so many great teachers at so many great buildings. So again, when you send us your application data, we asked you to think about it in the very first section. We asked you to think about your current or your predicted staffing needs. That's again what you're responding to with a grant. This grant money is ultimately for employees at those districts who step up and they say, I would like to get my initial teaching certification or an additional endorsement on an existing certificate, because that's ultimately what this is for. It's for candidates who want to get their initial teacher certification, or in response to a known need or teacher shortage area, they want to add on an endorsement. That is also okay to do, and we definitely want to see people step up and do that. So very important part of this, Jenny's going to cover a little bit later in the video, is a very important component to this is that you have to have a partnership with at least one, could be more, educator preparation providers, or what we call EPPs. At this point going on in the video, we're just going to use the word EPP. That's a shorthand for any of our college and universities that prepare teachers, but our EPPs could also be alternative route providers. So for example, Teachers of Tomorrow or #Teach, those are also, we consider those EPPs. You can also work with an out-of-state provider if you want, and if that's something that your teachers and you want to do. We're going to give you some information about that later. So when we say EPPs, we don't just mean Michigan's traditional college universities that have teacher programs. In fact, a little later, we're going to show you a QR code where you can look and see what the different providers are. So that's the general overview of the Grow Your Own grant program. Now let's talk about some of the money aspects. Let's go nitty gritty and to brass tacks, as my dad used to say. What are the actual allowable costs? What can you actually pay for? Well, anything that's coursework tuition, that would be for those teachers who are getting their initial certification or their additional endorsement. Any fees that are associated with coursework, we mean testing fees, but there could be lab fees or things like that. That's perfectly fine. Like I said, testing costs, any costs of testing. And when we say testing, we actually mean the Michigan test for teacher certification, but there might be some other tests involved as well along the way. Books and materials for coursework are also covered. That's right. We want to make sure that those candidates are fully supported with everything, all the materials they need, and you can pay for that too. Believe it or not, you can actually pay for travel to and from the locations for coursework. We've had a couple of side questions about exactly how would that work. We're not going to go through the video right now, but please ask us for more information. But yes, indeed, you can cover mileage for your candidates who are going to and from their locations for coursework. Yes, indeed. We've had some questions with this too. We're glad to say that the grant can pay for the costs of substitute employees that are needed to support that candidate in completing the coursework. So it's for the time that is provided for those people to go do their coursework. That's what you can pay for. We've had a couple of questions about substitute employees. So if you've got some questions, again, we're not going to cover it all in this video. We're not going to do the whole world of it, but please ask us questions if you have individual questions. This last bullet point might be an example of where you want to ask us some questions about what costs. There are some other costs that this grant covers. We call them, if they're necessary costs, it might require a prior approval from the Grow Your Own team. I'll give you a quick example, then I got to move on with the video, but a quick example of this might be, for example, software on a computer. Can the Grow Your Own program pay for software on somebody's computer? Yeah, but we'd have to take a look at make sure it's necessary for the candidate to be successful in coursework. We're going to ask you probably a couple of questions about that, but please know that the allowable cost is limited to those 6 or 7 bullet points you see there on the screen. Again, some costs are allowable that are not on this list, but please ask us first. For the Group 1 districts watching this video, remember, just as a reminder, I said this in the previous slide, but just remember that only the staff working in schools that are indexed for support, or the SIS schools, are eligible to receive this funding, to receive this reimbursement. I haven't used the word yet, but we do use the word reimbursement. The idea is that the candidate is experiencing their no-cost pathway or their preparation to meet those staffing needs, and then you as a district pay them back. There's a little bit of an asterisk next to that, because you'll see on a later slide, there might be some situations where you reimburse the candidate, but there might be some situations where you can pay directly. We absolutely encourage you to pay directly because you're the grant administrator now of that money. But again, the main idea here is to create a no-cost pathway for each candidate to address staffing needs. No cost for us means it's a pathway that contemplates all the possible costs for a candidate and plans for the final cost of the candidate to be zero. Even if in the interim, the candidate is paying something, eventually they'll get reimbursed. What we want to say is that when the smoke clears, right, and that candidate has their initial certification and has got a classroom job in your district, or they've added an additional endorsement so they can now take a position that you haven't been able to fill, that at the very end of that, they'll have said, well, you've made me, the final cost will be zero to that person. So however that works, you are the grant administrator, you plan that out. But again, that's the main idea for the grant. So there's a lot of questions right now about the timeline for the grant. And we actually have had some folks write in about, what happens if time runs out and things like that. We're not going to cover every situation right now on this video, but if we would be remiss if we didn't cover the top things here about the timeline. All the information, by the way, that you see on this slide is on a wonderful table called the Grant Administration Timeline that's on our website. So sometimes people write in with questions. I'll refer them to the website to look at that table. We're going to show you a QR code, by the way, for the website in a moment. And we will include the link to the website in future communications to you. But let me tell you right now, Jenny and I have worked really hard to make that website what it is with all the information it has. Do not miss it. It's the grant administration timeline is on that website. So your grant administration starts right upon receipt of the GAN. And by the time you're watching this video, you'll have the GAN in hand. And what's interesting is people think that's when the grant begins. It is when your grant begins, but we hasten to tell you that you can actually reimburse candidates for any expenditures they made all the way back to March 3 of 2021. That's a long way back. Why is that? Well, that's when we got the actual grant from the federal government, and that's technically when we can start as a state agency authorizing you to authorize those reimbursements. So the reason why we say that is because even though you may be a new Group 1 grantee under this last funding round, you may have had candidates who were actually in the pipeline. That is to say, they were actually along their no-cost pathway even before you ever even knew what this grant was. And the reason why is because many districts already have had school staff who say, you know what, I'd like to become a teacher. I want to do more for my school. And they have started down the pathway. You might have a candidate who said, well, shoot, I actually am still taking courses, but I started last summer. Can I get those reimbursed? And the answer is yes, you can, all the way back to March 3, 2021. So wouldn't it be great to have some candidates already in the pipeline? Well, the Grow Your Own grant can support them. What's really important for you is to look ahead is the end of what we call the obligation period. The obligation period ends on September 30 of 2026. The obligation period, the best way to think about the obligation period is that's the time where during which you're doing the main activities of your grant administration, when you're selecting candidates and when you're telling candidates, yes, you can start your pathway. And then as they go down the pathway, you're paying money. The obligation period is your time to select and support those candidates. After that, though, your reimbursements have to be wrapped up because the last date of the reimbursement requests on our Nexus system is November 29 of 2026. So you'll see on your GAN that there might be a 12/31/26 date. That's the end date for us as a state agency. But very important you understand this. The end of your ability to promise money to candidates really ends in September 30, 2026. And Jenny and I hope that you've had those conversations with candidates well before September 30 of 2026. But after September 30, you have about a month or so to finalize all of your expenditures and get them in, because at the end of November, we got to close off the gate for the reimbursement requests. Again, all of those dates are found on the grant administration timeline on the school staff grant website. But if you want to see something more in detail, which I'll show you later in the video, all of our dates for reporting, all the interim dates for reporting, things like expenditures, your budget, they're all found on the reporting calendar in the monitoring guidance document. So we actually created a document that's going to say That's going to give you a lot of details of what we're saying in today's video, as well as other things. In there is a whole calendar of your responsibilities as a reporter to report us data. So that's the timeline for the grant. You get an idea of it. Is there time? Yeah, there's plenty of time. Get your candidate started though. No time to waste, you know? So let's talk about your candidates. Actually, let's talk about your candidates, because part of what we asked you to do back when you applied for this money is really think about who is going to receive the money, even though at the time of administration, we didn't want you to give us their names. You knew who they were, but we did want you to think about like cohorts or groups so that you could kind of plan your budget. So again, Jenny and I don't need to know the actual names right now. We're going to ask you for a report about who they are, but for right now, you need to have an idea of who the candidates are in your mind that you're going to now support with this money. So it can be any employed individual working in school. You notice that the actual title of the grant is school staff. We didn't say just teachers because these are people that are already in a classroom. This could be anybody who's not even working full time for your district. They can be employed by a third party. The reason why Jenny and I are careful to say that is because they could be a really great substitute teacher who has been great with kids and you think they're going to be talented and you want to support them and they want to become fully certificated and full-time teachers. Well, my friends, the GYO grant is the way that you can support them into that full-time work, right? Could be a paraprofessional. We get a lot of questions about paraprofessionals. Listen, for many years, I worked with a really wonderful paraprofessional that we supported to become a teacher. This was before the Grow Your Own grant, and this is when I worked near Grand Rapids. But we thought the world of this person, and she just needed a little bit of support to get to teachers, to get to become a teacher. And she's now a full-time teacher. So if you've got a person like that in mind, perfect candidate for this. One of the things that we careful to say is that we have a couple of other like support products for support packages, I should say, or support programs for teachers or for educators working in schools. One thing we have to be careful to say is they can't receive Grow Your Own funding and the Michigan Future Educator Fellowship or the Michigan Future Educator Stipend. Those are two separate programs. Those are administered by the Department of Treasury on our behalf, but those are things that if they're receiving that, they can't receive GYO funds. Notice, of course, that I bolded the word concurrently because they could have been somebody who last year, right, received those, and now you want to support with Grow Your Own funds. Perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Just they can't do it at the same time. Same thing with Talent Together. There's also a consortium out there of Grow Your Own programs called Talent Together. And if you are a Talent Together, if the same teachers are receiving that, they can't receive the Grow Your Own funds. I don't know. I don't really think that applies to you, but we have to say it to make sure we're being complete. But again, one last reminder: the candidates have to be those who are working in a school index for support within your district. That is very important for you as a Group 1 grantee to remember. So I get, it's funny because I just got this question the other day. This person, I have a person that was, I had somebody who was on a permit, but they only had like 5 or 6 college credits. And they said, well, this person isn't a Grow Your Own candidate. And I said, why? Why not? They can have any level of education. They can have even no college university. It's just that you might give them some more support that way, but honestly, there's no entry, there's no like cover charge, if you will. There's no ticket to ride this train, to use the Huey Lewis in the News lyric. They can have any level of education. They can want any additional certification or initial certification, as long as that's something that is needed in your building. That's perfectly fine. So there's really this isn't just for science teachers, for example. This isn't just for people that have community college ed credits, something like that. It's any level of education. They do have to agree to attend those partnering EPPs. This is why in a little while from now, we're going to talk to you about how to get your EPP agreements together, how to get those started. They have to agree to attend those because the partnership is a very important part of the grant. One thing that you promised, by the way, is to hire them after they're done with their education, after they're done with their initial certification or additional endorsement, because why not? That's the whole point, right? And then they make a pledge to work for as many years as they were in the program. So there has to be kind of a handshake between you and the employee. We don't need to see those agreements, by the way. Those are up to you to make. But we do want to see that, after they get supported with this money, there's a commitment on both sides to really do what the grant was for, which was to address those staffing needs. Again, I told you about not concurrently receiving the future educator scholarship or the fellowship or the stipend. I already told you about that. This last one, though, is a good bullet point we wanted to present to you. There is some flexibility here. Just remember this. Hear this on the video today, but remember it later. There is some flexibility to reallocate funds to new or different candidates after the grant start date. We've already taken a couple of questions about, well, are the lists of candidates set? They are, in that you're starting them down the pathway, yes. But we've had many situations where somebody just simply changes because they get a different job. They change jobs, or they retire or something like that. There can be things that happen. We don't want any money back. We want you to use the money. So we have some wide flexibilities for you to reallocate funds to other staff members in the case of an unexpected staffing change. So just remember that. Come back to us with more specific questions a little later, but we wanted to make sure we put it on the video today in case, that's just something very important to know for the future. So that's kind of like your candidates, right? That helps you select who to start. You already had some of those people in mind at the time of the application. So I'm going to turn this over to Jenny for a minute, who's going to talk to you about the educator preparation providers and how to get your agreements together. Jenny, why don't you go ahead and tell us all about that?
Thanks so much, Phil. Here are the QR codes Phil mentioned to you, and I'm going to walk you through sort of the high points of the EPP portion of this grant. So again, this grant is intended to certificate future teachers into areas of need, and that needs to get done through educator preparation providers. So this coursework must be completed through a state-approved EPP program. There are 29 of them available in Michigan, and there are more outside of Michigan too. And we have a full provider list. If you follow that link or that QR code, there's a searchable site where you can see all the different providers available to us. The application also provides that list. And if you do choose to use an out-of-state provider, and there might be different reasons for that, for example, if a candidate is attending Western Governors or something and had already been doing so, you don't necessarily need to change them out midstream to a different provider. We just ask that you follow that you be aware of certain expectations and requirements for out-of-state providers and some caveats as well. But those are all available on the FAQ, and we're also happy to talk with anybody about that if you have questions there. But what we mean when we say EPP partnerships is exactly that. They're partnerships. It's not just sending a student off on their way to get their endorsement or certification. We expect that these Grow Your Own programs are district designed and run and implemented, and that these districts work with the EPP providers to make sure that everybody is kind of looking out for the best interests of this candidate, that they do indeed experience a no-cost pathway and that they experience the maximum success from this program. And I'll tell you a little bit about how to do that. I will also add that it is possible to add providers throughout the course of this grant. So let's say you get a new candidate and man, they just need one more semester and they can get a different endorsement that your school really needs. And they can get it at this one EPP, but darn, if you did not include that in your application or they are not a current provider, you can still partner with those EPPs. Or if there's an EPP that isn't serving you anymore, you need to nix that partnership, that's okay too. So this is really, really flexible. And we want to encourage you to continue to reflect on and evaluate how these partnerships are working for you. So if we go to the next slide, I'll outline a little bit what the expectations are here. So when we created this grant, there was an expectation that this be a partnership between the district and the EPP, and that partnership should be captured somehow. And so the way that we chose to capture, or we ask you to capture it, is through an agreement, an EPP agreement. And we outlined 6 really big ideas here of what those expectations, that shared responsibility between the Grow Your Own program of the district and the EPP should be. So anywhere from being upfront about the coursework and applicable costs that EPP can offer to help you when your candidates get the endorsements and certifications that you need, to what the responsibility is of how will those candidates be selected. Will they be admitted to the EPP? Have you talked about that? Are they going to make special arrangements or agreements? Are they going to evaluate that candidate's experience? Is this going to be in the best interest of that candidate? There's also points about coaching and observation assessment support for the MTTC, commitment to support that candidate if there are any unmet needs after they've completed their program. So it really is supposed to be a wraparound, holistic partnership to support that candidate all the way through their preparation and back into your classrooms. I also want to share that these points must be included in each EPP agreement. So if you are funding a candidate to attend an EPP, you should have an EPP agreement with that provider. The only exception here is if a candidate had already completed a program. So again, this harkens back to that start date of March 1st or March 3rd, 2021. So if you had a candidate complete a program so that they could work in your school district, then you can use funds to retroactively reimburse that candidate. And you would not need an EPP agreement in that case because, again, it's retrospective, retroactive. For all other partnerships, we do expect an agreement. But that agreement does not need to be a legally binding, super formal agreement. It can be an MOU or a letter as long as both parties have signed it. We just want to know that you have talked to that EPP and that you have both agreed on the shared responsibilities for supporting that candidate. Most EPPs actually already have some agreement templates. So we're far enough along into the grant that most of the Michigan EPPs have come up with something, have drafted something. So you don't necessarily need to start from scratch when you're soliciting those partnerships.
One of the things we do want to underscore, though, is to don't waste any time getting at least in contact with EPPs because you can get that ball rolling right away. We're going to talk more about that in our what's next steps. Jenny, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little about getting funds to candidates? Why don't you go ahead and wrap that up, and then I'll take the next section.
Absolutely. So supporting the candidates can look different. So some candidates may need reimbursements for funds that they've already spent or expenses that they've already incurred. Some candidates are not necessarily able to take on expenses and will need sort of prepayment or support that way. Keep in mind that this grant is a reimbursement grant, but what that means is it's a reimbursement to the districts for costs and for expenses incurred. It does not have to be that the candidate is incurring it and you are reimbursing the candidate. So it is completely possible and in fact advisable and encouraged for the district to use these Grow Your Own funds to make direct payments to the EPPs, to textbook companies if needed, to whatever it might be, to minimize the burden that's placed on our candidates. We have a teacher shortage. We need to meet needs in our school district. We want to make it as smooth and easy for candidates to become the teachers we need as we can. So keep in mind that when we say reimbursement based, that means the district must spend money and then get reimbursed. It doesn't necessarily mean that the candidate must do so. In order to reimburse districts, we use Nexus accounting. That's being set up for all the grantees. It should be pretty familiar, especially to your budget office. That's where you're going to track your budgets. That's where you're going to track your expenditures. We have a lot of support around that as well on our website, a lot of walkthroughs there, but it's going to move the money to the districts pretty smoothly. It will, of course, require some periodic reporting of what those expenditures have been, but it should be a pretty straightforward process to draw down funds as soon as you've spent them or at a schedule that works for you. Again, those instructions are on the school staff website. There are a couple really good walkthroughs there. And if you're seeing this, then they're available. So if you've already got funds that you have expended, or if you've got candidates that need to get going and need to be on their way, those funds are available to you right now.
Awesome. Fantastic. This next section, we're gonna walk you through some of the orientation materials that are gonna be really your brick and mortar for the next few weeks as you get started with your grant administration. We're really actually kind of excited about this section. It's kind of nerdy, but we're really happy about what we can offer people because we know again that as good teachers, we have a lot to teach, but we have to kind of break it down into manageable chunks. Well, I think you'll agree, my friends, we did exactly that with the next few things I'm going to show you. This first thing is a program development guide for GYO. We sent this out to you at the beginning of the process of application, so you might be familiar with it. And it really is a holistic guide for setting up the program itself. But what we did in the body of the document, it's not a very long document, but in the body of it, we asked you a number of consideration questions that we're hoping you had thought through for your application. And don't worry if you haven't thought through absolutely everything. Jenny and I know you can't think through everything that's going to happen. Like, for example, what happens if you have somebody who like leaves your employ and they were a candidate? We understand some things will happen, but the Grow Your Own guide at least gives you like a good structure. It's almost like a scaffold for your entire program, right? It's kind of an at a glance guide for the GYO program. It's not like a form you have to fill out. It just kind of is for your leadership teams and your teacher teams to think about how to support the candidates and how to make this really successful all the way into 2026 and then hopefully beyond. But it also provides a rationale for what you're going to do during your grant. It guides you as administrators for the best practices for GYO program success. And if you want a review of any time, if you can't find what we already sent you, we put it up on the website. Again, we can't tell you enough how happy we are about the website being that source of that filing, that big source of all the documentation you're going to need for this. And go there first for when you're trying to look for something. But the Grow Your Own program development guide is really kind of like, I guess, your first landing into GYO land, if you will. But your mainstay document is this next one. This is the one that we're going to ask you to really read first and kind of wade through a bit with our help, of course. We're not going to go through it all today on the video. There wouldn't be time, but that's also kind of why we made the document, so that there is a place where you can go and refer to. There's going to be parts of that you're as the executive administrator, you're going to want to read. There's parts that maybe your finance people will be more interested in. So we actually kind of made this document as an omnibus document or a catch-all for all the things you're going to need administration wise, or let's just say to operationalize the grant. Again, the link for this large document is on the school staff website. It's your best source of information on the grant administration, timelines, logistics, reporting responsibilities. We even put a few appendices in there that cover a lot of frequently asked questions or things that come up a lot. I mentioned reallocations a while ago. There's a whole appendix on reallocations and how to handle that. EPP partnership stuff's in there. So it's crucial information for your staff and for your financial office staff. And like I said before, it includes that wonderful reporting calendar, which I'm going to show you in the next slide. This reporting calendar is on pages 10 and 11 of that big document. Super important that I almost would say that you're going to want to print this out and put it on your refrigerator. It's that important because we often get districts that don't remember that something's up there. And remember, we'll also send you emails. Don't worry, we'll remind you we're not going to catch you at unawares, right? But imagine you're in a college class and you want the syllabus. My friends, this is the syllabus, right? Because it actually says what's due when, right, and why. So your reporting calendar has all of those key dates, all the different kinds of reports. What we did was we gave a summary of the kinds of reports that are due from grantees on page 11, so you know what's being asked. This actually helps your financial folks also prepare, because if they know, for example, that the expenditure report's coming up, they're going to make sure they have all their expenditure data ready by that time. You'll notice, by the way, on screen, we actually shaded two parts of it. And that's because at the time you're starting your grant, you don't need to worry about it at those top 4 or 5 reports. You're going to start your reporting already at the end of this month with your PIC report. And even then, Jenny and I are going to come out with some directions just for you because we know the start date of your grant's a bit later than some of the other rounds. So we're going to send you some more information. But in general, this is what I'd like you all to, again, print out and put on your refrigerators. It's like a calendar, right? Like I used to have to do. This would be a really good first place also for you to send your financial district, your financial staff, because this is something that they will really appreciate having so that they're not late with reporting. So again, reporting calendar is very important. That's kind of like one of the things that we knew we wanted to tell you up front. About the website, once again, we've been talking about the website. I've got a QR code that I added there for your website. Go ahead and go there now on your phone if you want. You're going to get the link to the website. But one of the things we usually tell people is keep it bookmarked because we sometimes get questions where we're referring back to the website for those things. We actually kept you actually see a little button for frequently asked questions. Jenny and I kept frequently asked questions from previous rounds on there. We kind of like updated them and curated them because we knew that as new grantees, you're going to want to go and look at those. Often people forget to go to FAQs. Check the FAQs first because that might answer your question. But again, the website is your best source of updated information and instructions and different documents. People ask us, well, need help with Nexus. I don't understand this works. We actually created a document for that, and it's on our website. So again, it includes that grant administration timeline, the FAQs, grant administration resources. We also have a link up there for the EPP partnership forms that Jenny talked about a minute ago. So boy, I can't say more about that website. We've done a lot of work to make it as robust as we possibly can. So now we're going to come to the next very important part of the video, almost the most important part, but we had to get through the first part first, which sounds weird to say, but it's what's next. Because as a new grantee, we got a couple things for you to do, right? But so as not to overwhelm you, we broke it down into 3 tasks, right? 3 main areas. The first thing to do really is understand what's required for grant administration. You watching this video is already the first good step because now you have a good grounding into the grant purpose. You know how to select candidates. You know how to get money to either the candidates or the third parties that need the money. You know all that stuff. So again, read that monitoring guidance document. Again, the video is not going to step you through every page. We're going to trust you to do that yourself. We think that you're going to enjoy the document because it looks nice and pretty and it's got some cool notes. We try to make it as understandable as possible, but we cannot tell you, so importantly, do the required reading for this course. And there's your required reading. By the way, the monitoring guidance document does say FY23, but don't let that daunt you. It is really for you. It's still the same that we've been using. We've updated it recently. Jenny and I may update this document again at some point in the future of the grant administration. We're not sure when, but for right now, it's still up to date. So we just kept the cover as it was. That grant administration timeline is on the website. Keep that bookmarked. Then you kind of know, you and your financial staff know exactly the parameters for the grant. So that's number 1. The next thing to do really is do not wait. Begin that outreach to EPPs and submit your signed EPP agreements. We cannot stress that more because you really can't start your candidates until you have those EPP agreements. If you have, don't worry about it, but get us the EPP agreement right away because without that, we don't have that very important partnership element that the grant requires. The cool thing is, in the required reading, right, in that monitoring guidance document we showed you a minute ago, we wrote an appendix to step you through everything we told you on the video a minute ago about the EPP partnership agreements and more. We even give you a little bit of background stuff. We give you some links. By the way, the PDF, when you download the PDF for the monitoring guidance document, it's chock full of links. So, like I've given you some QR codes. Download this document. You'll have all the links to everything you want. They're actually active in the PDF. We did that on purpose because people ask us where to find stuff. As teachers, we are experts in locating information, right? So this is your locator for information. But we cannot stress enough that that really is an important next step to take. In that appendix, it included the 8 necessary sections that Jenny went through a minute ago. So you needn't have taken notes in the video. We have it right there in Appendix A. It also links to that submission form. Jen and I are looking forward to getting those signed. Don't forget to sign the submission form. We're looking forward to getting all those forms so we can get you approvals right away. In fact, we've actually blocked off some time for that. So really important that you guys get that done next. The third thing to do is kind of something we're excited to offer. And let me tell you about it real quick. If you're here on video, you're going to see this also repeated in an orientation email we're going to send you out very soon. As soon as you have the grant award notification, we'll send you this out. We're going to send you a schedule of Zoom registration links for what we call office hours. Jenny and I are offering office hours during the work weeks of October 7 and October 14. There's going to be 7 2-hour sessions offered between those 2 weeks in different days, okay, and different times. We hope that we program days and times that are going to work with your schedules and for your staff schedules. It's open registration. It isn't like you're signing up for one office hours that you're meeting like privately with a professor, right? You're going to be with other people who will register. And we like that because we've done this before. And we like when people ask questions that the other districts go, oh, thank you for asking that question. They get the answer. So we want you to share questions and answers. But multiple staff members or multiple grantees can join 1 or more sessions. You can do 2 or 3 sessions, as whatever you need to get your answers taken care of. We timed this at a point when we know you would get the required reading done and start your EPP partnership agreements, so that we're expecting to have questions from that first phase of your work as grantees. So bring your questions to us. We're happy to answer it. 2-hour sessions. There's going to be 7 different sessions offered during those 2 work weeks. This is your opportunity to ask questions as a new grantee, and again, to hear questions from other grantees. We love that kind of collaboration and sharing. But the schedule and the registration links are not on this video. They're going to be on a separate document that's going to be attached to your orientation email. And multiple people from one grantee or one district can join. That's perfectly fine. They just would need to join from their own emails. When you click the registration link, Zoom will send you the active real link to your inbox. So that's how it works. We're really excited to kind of even meet you, during office hours. You kind of see our faces a little bit, but then you can get all of those like nitty-gritty nuts and bolts questions answered. So we're happy to offer that this time around for your group. All right, let's talk about other ways to get support. We talked about office hours, but we have a few more ways to get support. And Jenny, I'm going to turn this over to you to take us home, if you will. But let's talk about what to do with ongoing questions that grantees might have.
Absolutely. And to tack on to the last slide about registering for office hours, I think that'll be a good transition too. We're hopeful that the PALs will also join in those office hours. So please feel free to reach out to your partnership liaison and see if you can coordinate a time where you can attend together, because we have found that bringing everybody to the table at once gets a lot of questions answered and a lot of perspectives on answering that question. So we do encourage you to keep in contact with your partnership liaison and see if they can join you with those in whichever office hour session you want to join. So with that, for immediate help, we have so many different options for you to get some questions answered or to get some guidance. First of all, again, like contact your PAL. They have been such extraordinary resources, and they have so much knowledge about your situation, your context, but also this grant. They've been great partners with us on administering this portion of the grant too. So please do reach out to your PAL. You can also look at the FAQs that Phil mentioned. We update them as we get good questions from folks, we say, oh, that would make a great FAQ item. We throw those on there. So keep checking it. There might be new FAQs you hadn't seen before. The appendices and the monitoring and guidance document, those are basically instruction sheets at the end of the textbook. They're specific to different scenarios. So we encourage you to look at those as well. If you have questions about Nexus and about the accounting side of things, those instructions you can find on the GYO school staff website. We provide a walkthrough for that. But if there are technical questions that you have, we are not the people for that. Our expertise is pretty limited to GYO and not to the technical platforms of accounting. So if you have technical platform questions, then you can reach out to the Nexus team at the email provided there. It's mde-nexus-applications@michigan.gov. They're a great team. They'd be happy to help you as well. If you have any detailed grant questions, so you need to kind of workshop something, or if you have a question about an allowable cost, or if you have an idea or clarification that you need, feel free to reach out to us as well. This is our team inbox. We encourage you to use this inbox because we can also that way make sure that gets routed appropriately. So mde-edworkforcegrants@michigan.gov. Right now, we'll probably get quite a few questions. So we ask that you have a little bit of grace and patience with us as we make sure that everybody's questions do get answered. But we do see every email that comes in, and we will respond to every email that we get. So please do feel free to reach out that way. And we're looking forward to helping you however we can.
Once
And
again,
then of course,
yeah.
the school staff grant website. You're gonna get sick of hearing about this by the end of this video and by the end of
That's
this
right.
grant. But we've done a lot of work to make sure that it serves your needs. If there's something on there that you wish that we would add, please let us know. This is here to help you. It's not here to help us, it's here to help you. So please do use this website as a resource that it's designed to be.
And follow us on social media if you like it. I remember there was an old ice cream store that I used to go to as a kid that said, if you don't like us, tell us, but if you like us, tell others. Well, so tell others, and follow us on social media. And we also, as a footnote to this, we also have talked to a number of you already about positive media that you've had for the Grow Your Own project. And if you've got any of those kind of media things, share them with us either on social media or send them to us, because we love to hear how this is changing the lives of teachers and the students at the schools, because that's what it's for. We are so thrilled to be able to do this, to administer this grant, and to put the money to such a wonderful use. And as always, we value your feedback. That QR code is actually to a feedback form. I'm going to leave it here for a moment as we sign off, but we do actually look at the feedback. It's very important. We believe in continuous improvement here at the Department of Education. So please use the feedback form if you've enjoyed the presentation of this video. But without further ado, that is your orientation video. Now that you are our new dedicated round Group 1 grantees. Jenny and I are so proud to be working with you and with your partnership agreement liaisons. So we wish you all the best of luck, and you know where to go with questions. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.